Hello people of the sun, how are you doing? Thank you for joining me into another one of these episodes. Everybody knows that the concept of the vampire was born in 1897 with the publication of Dracula by Bram Stocker. But what if the concept of the vampire came from a Mesoamerican piece of literature? I know there's not a lot of it has been burned, but what if I were to tell you that there are statues all over South Mexico and in Guatemala that have creatures that are half man and half bat? What if I were to tell you that there are a lot of interesting coincidences regarding the date of the publication of Dracula? What if the first Batman was Maya? But anyway, there are descriptions of these creatures by the Maya to the Spanish conquistadors. So let's analyze this, and thank you very much. Let's go. The Popol Vuh is a holy book by the Maya. The book initially existed up in the 1700s, and it was first transcribed by a fray, an Andalusian fray, who goes by the name of Francisco Jimenez. This fray, he was in Guatemala, middle of nowhere, in this place called Chichinastenango. And in this place, he served as a fray for the Catholic Church and befriended a lot of the Maya people in that region. Some of the people that lived in that region were the Quiche-Maya. And Don Francisco, or Fray Jimenez, whatever you want to call him, he learned the Maya language, not only to speak it, but also to write it. And he happened to stumble upon the Popol Vuh in Maya. Now, it was the tradition of the Spanish to destroy every single book that they got their hands on. By destroying, I mean burning it. But it just so happened that this Andalusian fray transcribed it into Spanish. And since it was translated into Spanish, it went past the flames of the Inquisition and the Catholic Church or any of the Spanish authorities. But the Popol Vuh was kind of like the Bible for the Quiche-Maya. It has a story of creation. It has a story of how people were created. It has great length and descriptions of the theology and even demonology of the Maya. It has stories about princesses, about the multiple creation stories and how the things come about and what happened, like the deluge. And so in this instance, I want to talk to you about the brothers Xibalba. The brothers Xibalba were a pair of brothers that were around when demons kind of roamed the earth. And in fact, that's kind of the perception that we get, but in reality, probably the Maya believed that demons were all around them. Believed that they shared the earth with gods and with demons, with a house, the kings, and themselves and servants. And so their grasp of reality was not like our reality, where we have a very shall we call it down-to-earth type of philosophy, where most men are just men, there are no gods, there are no demons, magic doesn't exist, and natural phenomena, it just happens to happen, and is not attributed to any divine rule or to any divine creation. We are very much in the book of evolution, where most schools teach us that reality as we know it, the motion of the planets, the motion of the sun, light, and so on and so forth, have been a fruit of evolution. Now, the story of the brother Xibalba begins with a demon called Sipakna. Sipakna was a demon who liked to play tricks on humanity, And in one of these tricks is the story of the 400 men. The 400 men were trying to build something, and they were trying to move a gigantic log. Sipakna, being a very powerful and strong demon, offered to help them, and instead of helping them, he killed them. These two, the brother twins of Xibalba, Unapu Ixbalanque, was not kosher, and as a result, they decided to trick and destroy this demon. This begins a series of events that reveal a lot about the demonology of the Maya, and it also reveals a lot about the strength and the knowledge and wisdom of humanity. Now, the twins also trick Sipakna in a very similar way in which Sipakna fooled the 400 men. They were asking him for help, and he tried to help them, and instead of Sipakna burying the twins buried Sipakna underneath a mountain. Now, these created a series of events where the other demons were not very fond of this particular action, and they basically made enemies with the twins. The story begins where the two brothers, they were playing the ball game. Now, you have to understand something before I continue. This type of stories is not just a story. There's a lot of hidden information within the story. For example, the 400 men, it was probably associated with the 400 stars of the north. And so there seems to be probably a type of celestial war. And since these two brothers, the Xibalba brothers, they also seem to have a type of hidden knowledge and magical powers, since they're able to disjoint all of their bodies to entertain the gods. And so they seem to have a certain type of knowledge that it was not common knowledge. And so in this instance, when the brothers are playing the ball game, they are taking on the persona of priest, because the players of the ball game, they were considered priests, and they were the priests of celestial objects, that is planets or stars. And the ball itself represented the sun. And so if the sun was able to go through the hoop of the ball game court, that meant that a new age was to begin, and the favor of the gods was rewarded. And so this is where the story begins, where the Xibalba brothers met the court of demons. Yes, I'm going to the vampires. Thank you for your patience. The Xibalba brothers were playing the ball game, and they disturbed some of the demons. And the demons, being lords of that particular land, they summoned the brothers. The brothers descended onto Xibalba, which is a type of, I guess I'm assuming, a type of hell. Kind of like Mictlan, but Mictlan is a Nahuatl or Aztec word, and the word Xibalba is probably kind of an equivalent to Mictlan. And so the brothers descend, and they show certain tricks to the demons, to the lower demons, like disjoining their bodies, and the demons were they were amused, they were entertained, and they also admired them for being able to perform such amazing tricks. And they played a ball game with the demons. The Xibalba brothers destroyed them. They had no chance at winning, and this really angered the demons of Xibalba. And as a result, the Xibalba demons sent the two brothers to the House of Black Smoke. I don't know, some translators in English call it the House of Gloom. And in this particular house, there were many different rooms where there were different tests. The demons, since they couldn't defeat them at the ball game, did not want to kill them directly, they sent them to this particular house so that they could die. There were multiple rooms in this house. The first room was a room of complete darkness, and the brothers were supposed to find their way out. They were able to light up a few embers, and they made their way out. The second one was a room where it was very cold, and they had to find their way out. They also burned embers, and they found their way out. Then the third room is the room of the jaguars, and the fourth one is the room of the vampires. Now, this particular word is a little interesting because we cannot really find it in many other different sources, but they call them man-bats. But we do know that there are many different physical representations of these bats, thanks to like some cups or some bases. So we're able to find a description of these entities, which they do happen to have the body of man and also the face of a bat. Another interesting aspect about all of this is that these man-bat type of creatures, let's call them vampires, they are quite strong, they're bloodthirsty, and the way in which the Xibalba brothers were able to defeat them was by exposing them to the light of the sun. Now let's talk about a little bit about the Popol Vuh. How did it make its way to Europe? Now, the script of Brother Jimenez found its way into Germany into the mid-1800s, where it was translated and was published into German, and conjointly there was another Frenchman that also found a copy of it and translated it into French. The German beat the French, and that was the first publication. And once it was translated from the Spanish, kind of like medieval Spanish, into German and into French, you find its way into other different languages. Now, Mr. Stocker, from his descriptions about his life, he was an avid attendee of the British Library, and there is no doubt that a Popol Vuh found its way into the British Library, where Mr. Bram Stocker could have access to this particular book. Now, Mr. Stocker also probably belonged to this other organization called the Golden Dawn. This particular organization, which was mostly formed by a lot of elite of the English society, some of them were royals, they were very fond of acquiring knowledge from other cultures, like Kabbalah from the Jews, or the Tatwas from the Indians, Enochian from and the more modern English, kind of a little bit medieval England. And so the Golden Dawn was known for collecting books that belong to magical organizations that belong to other regions of the world. And so therefore it is not very hard to believe that a Popol Vuh had probably found its way into the libraries of the Golden Dawn and of course the British Library. But one thing that Bram Stocker did not capture was the magical interpretations of the vampires. There have been many holes in the plots for vampires in their description, whether they were real or they were not. But many people have believed that sometimes they might have been real. But if they were real, how did they survive? How did they become vampires? And so on and so forth. But the Popol Vuh describes the descent of the brothers into Xibalba in a very ritual way. For example, and if you have watched one of my previous episodes, one of the first things that a ritual can begin, or a priest is to begin a ritual, is by marking the corners. When the brothers Xibalba descend onto Xibalba, they have to cross a river. Then after they cross the river, they cross a river of blood. Now, if you have also watched one of my previous episodes, that river of blood is present in Mictlan. This is one of the tests that the deceased person needs to cross in order to be able to find its way to the land of Mictlatecutli, the Lord of the Dead. And in Xibalba, once the twins are able to cross this river, they find themselves in crossroads where there's a black, a white, a yellow, and a red. If you have watched the previous videos, you will know that this is representing the east, the west, the north, and the south, not in that order. But this is telling the reader that this is about to become a ritual. It is not just a thing that just happens. And so Mr. Stocker just picked up a concept of a very general concept of what the vampire could be. It did not pick up on the numerology of why was it the fourth house of the house of black smoke, or what were the hero twins really doing. It might have been a problem with the translation. There were many translations of the Popol Vuh, particularly because it was translated from a codice, and then probably Fray Jimenez spoke Mayan and read Mayan, but he was probably not very well versed, or at least as well versed as the person that wrote the Popol Vuh that he was using. And from that manuscript, the German translation and the French translation differed. And based on which translation was used, either the German or the French translated into English, there might have been some discrepancies. And so therefore, I don't blame Mr. Stocker for maybe mistranslating or not understanding some of these aspects. And a lot of these aspects also, they were not available around that time. Now we have the great luxury to be able to cross-reference from many other different sources, from all the different information that has been gathered by archaeologists, by many digs that have been happening, and by translation of the Maya language. And so I don't blame Mr. Stocker. A lot of those people of the Golden Dawn, they made a great effort to try to translate many occult books, like the Key of Solomon or the Book of Abramelin. And so the Popol Vuh might have been one of those victims of getting a translation, but not getting a very accurate translation. But it was fortunate enough for us to be able to at least become aware of this particular book, or maybe it wasn't. But anyway, this is my theory as to where did the concept of the vampire originated in the Western world. Please let me know if you agree or you disagree with it. Thank you very much and have a great one. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching.